Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter, we talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 220 of the Wannabe Clutter Free podcast. On today's episode, I am chatting with Brad Nelson about decluttering our finances, how to get out of debt and stop living paycheck to paycheck. And even if you're in the minority of families these days and not living paycheck to paycheck, we chat about lots of tips to help with your finances, including cutting out the stress of big spending seasons like back to school or even the holidays, which are coming up faster than you think. It is a great conversation, but before I get ahead of myself, I want to say thank you to you for joining me today. I hope you like what you hear, and if you do, please go ahead and subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. I have some fun bonus episodes coming up that will not be releasing on Wednesdays, and so I really don't want you to miss out. All right, enough housekeeping and pressure. Let's quickly learn about my guest so we can dive into the good stuff. Brad Nelson is the founder of Debt Free Dad. As a devoted single father, Brad has committed himself to help normal, everyday people take back control of their finances so they can live a happier, less stressful life with the Debt Free Dad podcast and his online course, Roots of Personal Finance. Beyond finances, Brad values family, outdoor adventures, and creating lasting memories. I'll have a link to all of Brad's information in the show notes, which you can find at wannabeclutterfree.com/220. Again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/220. And now let's get to our conversation. Well, hey, Brad, welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Hey, good, Deanna. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you here. This is going to be so much fun. We are going to talk about money, which I know can be a topic that is difficult. It's like stressful, right? It has a lot of emotions around money. So I think we'll get into some of those today, but tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I started Debt Free Dad coming up on, man, 9, 10 years ago now, and ultimately with the goal of just helping people with a lot of the same challenges that I was having with money for many, many years. And it wasn't something that was really on my list of things I was going to do with my life. It just kind of, I accidentally got into this, so to speak, because as I got out of debt and overcame a lot of I would say the common challenges that most people face, paycheck to paycheck living, lack of savings, lots of financial stress. People just started asking me for help. I was sharing my story and just kind of saying, hey, this is the kind of stuff that I did. And people started asking me for help privately because, again, money is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. But I kind of just started falling in love with helping people not only change their finances, but really the ripple effect that your financial life has on the rest of your life. When you have less financial stress, less financial worry, you actually have money in the bank and you actually have, money at the end of your paycheck to go do fun things with. It's pretty cool to see how life-changing that can be for so many people. And so that's how I got into this. And since then, I've helped thousands of people all over the world now save and pay off tens of millions of dollars. And I find it's crazy to even say that because I'm just this normal guy. I live in a normal house. I drive normal cars. I live a pretty normal life outside of just the way I handle money. But to see the effect of a lot of what our messaging has had on other people's lives, it's been pretty exciting.
I love that. I feel very similar, right? I'm like, I'm just a normal person in a room, but it is really fun to be able to help other people. And I absolutely love that. So can you share with us a little bit about your personal journey and you kind of what led you down this path? I know people really love to hear those kind of origin stories.
I started out my life like most other people. I kind of wasn't really taught how money and personal finance work. I was really just kind of went what popular society does with money, which is debt and payments and paycheck to paycheck living. And so I fell for the common traps of credit cards and car payments and, had some student loans and just, ended up buying a house that I couldn't afford and probably shouldn't have bought my first house. But I kind of fell into this whole idea that, renting was a sin and you shouldn't do that. And I had no business affording this house. And it really just put me into a really tough financial spot. And I can remember even calling my mom when I first moved into this house. I was still in my young 20s, I'm paying my bills, and I just had barely enough money to get through the rest of the month after everything was paid. And that was just making minimums. It wasn't saving, it wasn't doing nothing. And I remember she's like, "Well, welcome to being an adult," because that's what being an adult is all about. So, I didn't really think that there was anything different. And as I got older, you sell yourself on this idea that, well, as I make more money and as my career improves, I'll make better choices and I'll do different things. And I just never did. I had the lifestyle creep. Make a little bit more money, I'd buy a little bit better car, or I'd go on nicer vacations, or we'd buy new things for the house, or it was just always more and more and more. And by the time I got into my late 20s, I was just like, I just can't do this, and I wanted to be able to start my own business at some point, but I also knew just based on where my finances were, it was going to be pretty much impossible for me to ever do that and walk away from my salary because I was so trapped with my salary to pay all these bills that I've accumulated. So that's really what kind of prompted me. I also had a 2-year-old son, Noah, at the time. I was going, my first marriage ended in divorce. And sadly, we had lost our home. We lost our home to foreclosure because neither one of us could afford it, and we had just too many bills. And so that was a really kind of eye-opening experience to me, and more of like, you start to sit back and realize the house of cards I truly built in my financial life, and just how all it takes is just one card to come out and the whole thing starts falling. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I got to start doing this stuff different. And so I just started learning about it. I started listening to podcasts and going to seminars and reading books and just, anything I could learn about personal finance, I was just going to start learning it. And I started practicing some of this basic stuff that's out there. And after 4 or 5 years of hard work and failure and trial, I paid off all my debt, becoming completely debt free. And I've been debt free now for over 11 years outside of my mortgage. And yeah, that's kind of how we got here. It's crazy.
Wow. Congrats on that. Lots of learning that had to happen along the way, but I'm happy you're here on this side telling us that it is possible for anybody else that's going through, those struggles and a really hard time. It is possible to, as you said, get yourself out of it. And that you said something there that really just is like, oh yeah, the lifestyle creep. So even with obviously with money, it's easy to have that lifestyle creep because yeah, you buy the nicer car, like you said, you go on the nicer vacation, you buy the new stuff to put in your house, you buy a bigger house, and now you fill that up with stuff. And so to me, I do see there are so many similarities between spending our money to get the stuff that we don't need for what purpose, right? We're not really filling that, we're trying to fill some hole or void that we can maybe needs to be looked at a different way. And so I am excited because I do think money and stuff go hand in hand. I know these kinds of shows when I talk about money is always interesting to people as well. So what are some of the common financial habits that lead people into debt? I think they're often the same ones that lead people into clutter and kind of recluttering if they've gotten clutter free in the past, and probably the same if they've gotten debt free and then they end up with debt again. All right, let's take a quick break, and then Brad is going to walk us through some common financial habits that lead people into debt, but more importantly, help us see how we can identify if we're falling into these traps before they get too deep.
I'm Margaret.
And I'm Amy.
And together we host the podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Margaret, I would say you're sort of a where are my keys kind of mom.
Correct. Sometimes a where are my kids kind of mom. Well, you're Amy more of a we were supposed to leave 35 seconds ago, mom.
I mean, touche. In each episode of What Fresh Hell, we come at a topic from our usually completely opposite perspectives. I bring the research.
And I bring kind of the gimlet eye. Like, is that research really going to work, people?
And almost 10 million downloads later, we're still laughing.
We also talk to experts in the parenting field, plus parents with stories we can all learn from.
We make each other laugh, we challenge each other's assumptions, and we have what we think is the best parenting community on the internet.
Check out What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood wherever you listen to podcasts.
What are some of these habits that can lead them down the wrong path?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones is it's just what we do as Americans, even working in other countries or working with people from other countries, there's a lot of that kind of roll over there too. Have a lot of people that we work with in Canada, and it's like, I think we are just some of these, our societies are built on so much just consumerism. and buying things. And, the onset of social media, and social influence and seeing what other people are doing. And I think sometimes we get so caught up into consuming and we tend to forget why it is that we are consuming and why is it that we feel like we need to buy the thing. You know, the Stanley Cups were crazy, I mean, still probably are to some certain degree, right? But, you'd see these videos of these people just going crazy for these cups. And it's like, do we ever sit back? And I'm guilty of this too. We're all human, right? Do we ever sit back and truly reflect and look at and be intentional with the thought of why is it that I feel like I need to have that stuff? So I think that's one reason why we fall into some of this. And again, you look at the statistics of paycheck to paycheck living, and you got almost 7 out of 10 households living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's a pretty normal thing. A lot of us lack savings. A lot of us have a lot of credit card debt. Average car payment right now is over 700 and some odd dollars, and that's continuing to rise. And the term on those loans is continuing to get extended further and further out to make those payments more affordable. And so I think, we fall into this very much like I did. We fall into this, typical advertised life in the United States. And the reality is that's just become unaffordable for so many people. So I think that is a big reason. The other reasons is there just is a serious lack of education on just the basic principles of personal finance, which kind of blows my mind when you think about it because the basic principles of personal finance are pretty basic. They're nothing super sophisticated or hard. But what makes it hard is what we're constantly being sold. And what we're constantly being sold is, well, what you have isn't good enough, or you don't have what we're selling, so we're going to make you feel bad for that. Like, so we're getting all of this messaging, social media and advertising, and it's on our phones, it's in our emails, it's on the radio, it's everywhere. And you just can begin to feel like what you have and the life that you have, the material possessions that you have just aren't good enough. And so I think a lot of us tend to fall into that. Um, I mean, there's obviously other reasons, obviously, that we come across, but I think from a broad perspective, as far as people who make middle to higher incomes, I would say a lot of them fall into that. And where a lot of them will come to us and they'll start listening to our message, they're like, I never really thought about any of this stuff the way that you guys do. It's a lot of those light bulb moments that people begin to have. Like, why is it that I feel like I need to have this $700-800 car payment when in reality, a much cheaper one would do the same job and I would have less financial stress? But, a lot of us just don't think about it that way because we're constantly trying to just keep up all the time.
Oh, so true. Why do we always want to keep up with the people around us? And I do think our inputs are really important, right? Like figuring out who you're being influenced by, because we're all influenced by someone. Even, I'm sure, I mean, I know I am, I'm sure you are, right? So we're all influenced by people, the people we hang out with, the people we're around. And that statistic you said there was really interesting. The 6 out of 7 households are living paycheck to paycheck. Well, no wonder it feels like it's normal, because if everybody around us is living paycheck to paycheck, then everybody around you is having those same struggles. And I'm not saying that you obviously, are going to ditch all your friends that are, around you, but can we be better influences? Can we find better influences online, following you, following someone like me, to get people out of that, like, hey, it's okay to not have a Stanley Cup. I have a funny story about the Stanley Cup. I never bought into the hype. I didn't own one for the longest time. I just went to a podcast conference and, you get your little swag bag of goodies and I scratch off the thing and it's like, oh, you're a winner. I'm like, okay, I'll go see what piece of swag I'm leaving behind at the conference. So I walk over with a friend and I was like, hey, I have a winner. And she's like, you're the first winner. I was like, okay, what did I get? She goes, well, you can have a t-shirt or a Stanley Cup. And I was like, did you just, like, is that really the question? I can have a t-shirt with your company logo on it, or I can have Stanley Cup. And I was like, well, you know what? I'll take the Stanley and see, because I have an 11-year-old who has not been afforded a Stanley in her life. And I thought, well, I'll carry this thing around, see what I think about it. I'm not a fan. I don't understand. I do not understand the hype. If you love your Stanley, great. I'm happy for you. But honestly, after 5 hours of carrying this thing around all day with my laptop and my backpack and all the other things I had, I was just like, I don't get it. So the jury is still out to see if my daughter wants this thing. Otherwise, it will be donated. It's one of those where it's like, sometimes you just got to try it, but then also be okay to say, like, look, I tried it. That wasn't for me. and let it go. But all right. Well, anyway, I know that's a little out of topic, but it is easy to see how you can get influenced by people, and it's really hard. FOMO is so hard.
Very. And especially with social media, I mean, we've shared some pretty crazy and interesting statistics on FOMO. And people openly admit, like, when they see stuff on social media, um, they feel like they are missing out, and I think that gets more and more of us to spend money and do things that we necessarily can't afford, but we want what other people want. And I think, there's nothing wrong with that human side because we all have it. I think we have to just get better with understanding that we have it. And how do you come up with things in your own way with how you work on how to battle against yourself? Because I do too. Like one of the ways I spend money is I get bored. Like if I get bored, especially here in Wisconsin in the wintertime, there's not much to do. There's not much going on. I found that I spend more money then. So I recognize that about myself. So when I'm looking at things, I'm like, I feel it. Like I'm bored. That's the only reason I'm buying this. It isn't because I want it. It's just because I'm bored. So we all have that thing. It could be, maybe, you cope with having a bad day and you shop. Or maybe you're one of the people who's a celebratory shopper, like something good. Now I want to shop, right? It's like we all have our thing. It's just figuring out what that thing is. And then how can you start working to, again, create these tools to help fight against that human side of you. And that takes time. That takes time.
Well, yeah, and introspection too, right? Which is the hard part when we're all so busy taking that moment of introspection. So, my next question for you was going to be for someone who is feeling overwhelmed by their financial situation. What are some of those first steps they can take to start, as I'm going to bring this back to clutter, decluttering their finances and those habits? I think that is maybe step number one is figuring out why we're shopping, but you tell me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you look at the statistics of financial stress, and I think what's one of the number one stress factors in the United States right now is money and personal finance. 47% of adults say that money is negatively impacting their mental health right now. That's almost half of a population. So I think, I love the saying that you just said is how do we start to declutter our finances? Because I feel personally, as someone who's helped a lot of people, where a lot of that stress and anxiety has come from is because number one, a lot of us are just very unorganized and cluttered when it comes to our financial lives. Number two is we don't really have a good plan that we can depend on that's allowing us to see results, save money, see results in paying down debt, see results in being successfully able to purchase the things that we want to be able to purchase with cash. So I think one of the best things that you can do if you're getting started, and take your time with this because it can be a little overwhelming at first, is figure out where your money's been going. And for so many people, we shared a statistic on our podcast a little while back ago. 50% of the millennial generation has no idea what's going on in their bank account. 50% of an entire generation. They have no idea what's going in. They have no idea what's going out. So I think one of the best things that you can do is just become more aware of your current spending, your expenses, your income that's coming in, and really get a pulse as to what's happening. Because for a lot of us, we're not really paying attention. We're living for today. And if you got kids, like I get it. I mean, we're busy. Like we're busy parents. Like, it's hard, especially right now. My kids are getting ready to go back to school next week, and this house is a circus this week right now, right? But so, we're constantly dealing with these things and juggling these things. And finances tend to be one of those things that we push off and we push off and we push off. But yet it's amazing to me how many people say, well, I'm broke. I don't have any money. I don't have any money to save. I don't have money to pay off debt. But when they go actually through and start looking at their expenses, they begin to start seeing like, well, wait, we do actually have money to do some of those things. It's just we're blowing it or spending it on other things that really aren't helping us reach our goals. So go back and print out the last 3 to 6 months. If you want to be an overachiever, do the last 12 months of like bank statements, credit card statements. Go through your PayPal account, Venmo, Apple Pay, anywhere you're spending money. If you're a old-fashioned person, print out everything. Get your highlighters out. Or if you're new age, you like digital, or you like technology, do it with an app or whatever. But start figuring out where all your money's been going. And time again, I will have people come back to me and they say, I am sick to my stomach seeing what I've seen now. Here I am thinking that I don't have the resources or the means to be able to save or get out of debt or feeling like we're always broke. But the reality is like we actually do have money and we just got to, make some better choices with it. But When it comes to the decluttering side, then you get the opportunity as you go through your expenses to figure out, okay, number one, what are you going to keep? Based on the life that you want to live, what are you going to keep? Number two, what could you shop around? What are some things that easily get missed? Things like insurance and subscriptions. And there's so many different ways that you can save on a lot of those things. But we tend to just ignore it, leave it alone because we don't pay attention to it too much. And then the third one is what are you going to get rid of? What isn't bringing the value in your life? What are the things that you could easily do away with to recollect that dollar, those really precious dollars, especially in a paycheck to paycheck living situation, and repurpose those dollars to help you reach some of the goals and ease some of the financial stress that you have. People who go through this process, and again, it takes a little bit of time, but people who go through this, they already have a sense of like control, less stress, less anxiety because they begin to understand where exactly they're at. I suggest also going through, writing down all of your bill due dates, putting them on a calendar system, like get everything organized. And you'll be amazed that just going through this little simple process takes a little time, but simple. You will feel so much better. And then the next question is like, okay, I see how much debt I have now. I see how little savings I have now. How do I make that better? And that's where the real work starts coming in of how we help people build, their emergency fund savings, and how do we start working with them to pay down their debts. But we can't really get there until we figure out where we're starting from.
So true. And I feel the same way when you're looking around your home, right? You've got to take inventory. Got to figure out where are you? What are the sticking points? Where are you spending money? Like you said, that doesn't really help you get to your goals. When you walk around your home, what is the room that just like drags you down? What is it? And how can we start to fix it? Yeah, the awareness piece is so important. Obviously, you got to know where you're starting from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And it's like I said, so many of our members will say, I can't believe how much better I feel. They're like, I haven't even saved any money yet. I haven't even paid off any debt yet, but I still feel this sense of relief because I know where I'm at. And I finally just kind of faced those skeletons in the closet and took them all out and really got it down on paper. And it is amazing the feeling that you'll have when you do that.
Yeah, true. Because I think we build it up to be something it's not, right? Like, so you build it up to be this huge, giant monster, where if you just rip off the Band-Aid and do it, yeah, it might be scary. Yes, you might feel overwhelmed. Yeah, you're probably going to get down on yourself for spending money in a category you're like, what am I doing? But you'll at least have gotten rid of the boogeyman, right? The dark corner, right? Of you've shined light on it. You've said, now I can make a difference here versus just trying to bury your head in the sand, which never works. Never, ever works.
Never. Yep. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are some habits? Let's say we've gone through that. Obviously, we're not going to be able to go through the whole process. We're not going to, have time to do that. And obviously, this is a big thing we can build up. But what are a couple teeny tiny habits we can start to do to maintain a healthy, stress-free financial life? Let's say we've done this first. We've started putting things into place. Kind of on the other end of it, like some little things that you're like, here's your little checkup tips that you need to keep in play.
Yeah, I think once you have your expenses put together, then we start bringing up that really dirty word, the budget, that a lot of people don't like to use, you know. And again, a lot of people don't like to use it because, again, I feel like advertising has destroyed the word budget. They say, are you going on a budget vacation, or if you're shopping for furniture or whatever, or you on a budget, which just automatically assumes that you're just cheap, broke, and don't want to spend money. And that's not what a budget is at all. A budget is simply just a calculation of your income and your expenses. But now that you've gone through all of your expenses, now you can actually start to put together a realistic budget based on truly what all your expenses are. Because you by doing this over the last 3 to 6 months or even 12 months, you'll roughly know what you've been spending on, especially like a regular expenses that go up and down, like, your groceries or your fuel or your gas or, prescriptions and things that we just kind of tend to forget about. It's much easier to put a budget together once you know what those numbers are. So I think a budget on a monthly basis is so key. And remember, writing the budget is the easy part. It's the following it, which is where the hard work really kind of comes in. It's keeping those blinders on and avoiding all the shiny objects out there and sticking to your plan. And that takes, unfortunately, just a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error. You're going to fail. Also, a lot of people, I think, tend to put unrealistic expectations. They have to get the budget to the perfect penny or they suck at it. And I gotta tell you, I've been doing this for 15 years now. I've never had one month where my budget's been perfect. It never will be. But if you get it 80% there and 90% there, like you're gonna be much better than not having a plan at all. So I think having that budget is key. I think another big thing that we need to do and we need to get better at is looking ahead at future expenses that are coming down the road. So, like for instance, we're recording this here at the end of August, and what is that? September, October, November. Holiday shopping season is 90 days. Starts 90 days from now, right around Thanksgiving. It's crazy, right? But I love to bring up the holidays because it's a perfect example. Because a lot of people say, "Well, the holidays just snuck up on me." Well, the last time I checked, at the same time every year. They don't sneak up on us. Every year they happen the same time. But, we get busy. We tend to just lack, planning and looking ahead. And, same thing. We just mentioned, my kids, all the kids are going back to school. And I forget, I just read this is like some over $20 billion is spent on back to school supplies. It's insane. But that's another one, where you're spending a good deal of money, one time a year, but it tends to get forgotten about. And we're, going to use debt, obviously to afford those expenses. So I think one of the best things that you can get in the habit of is every single day is asking yourself, like, what's coming up the rest of this month? What's coming up the next 90 days? What's coming up the next 6 months? What's coming up the next 12 months? And starting to put together a plan and using your budget to plan ahead for those expenses, which is hopefully going to eliminate altogether the use of having, to go into debt to afford some of the things that are going to be coming up. So I think, when we talk about where to get started and things to work on as you move forward, budgeting and just looking ahead at future spending can be so um good as far as limiting how much more debt you're going to go into, but also limiting the stress. Because when you plan ahead and you start, even if you 75% saved up the money and you only have to 25% take out debt, like you're setting yourself up for so much less stress by taking some extra time and planning. And ultimately, it only takes about 10 or 15 minutes a day to kind of really just go through some things and just, look at your bank accounts, look at your spending, ask yourself like what's coming up, making sure you're on target, look at your budget. And it shouldn't take any longer than that once you kind of have it all set up automatically.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, let's go back to that elephant in the room of back to school shopping. You were saying your kids are going back to school and this is your final week and, everything's kind of chaotic. Absolutely. So a lot of people are in that same boat. We went back a couple weeks ago, but there's still, all of the early stuff that comes up, the clubs that get started, the, after school classes she wants to take, the extracurriculars, those kinds of things. So even if we've already gone back to school, what are some of the ways that you tell families and help them save for this time of year? And especially as my kid gets older, right? Like she is now she's 11. So things are a little bit different. We're not there quite yet, but I'm already looking ahead. I'm looking ahead to next year when she wants to buy more new things, feels the need to fit in a little bit more when she goes to junior high, this kind of a thing. So how can we set ourselves up for back to school success? One more break, and then Brad's going to give us advice on how to save at back to school time. It's a little bit different than we just chatted about. Plus, I love his tips about receipts, which you will not want to miss.
Yeah, so I think it's like I said, looking ahead at those future expenses, like, okay, if you just went back to school, like save all your receipts, go back and look at how much you spent. Okay. Divide that number by 12 and now put that small amount of money away each and every single month into a savings account. Right now, especially if you can get yourself into a high yield savings account, which is paying a decent amount of interest right now back just for putting money in a savings account. That's one of the best ways that you can do that. And what we're doing is we're creating sinking funds is the fancy term for it. So essentially a sinking fund is just a savings goal divided by however many months that you have to save for it. And you just put that money away every single month. I do this for everything. And the cool part about it is that for a lot of things, and not back to school, not so much, but there are a lot of things that you can get discounts on for paying in full. Like for instance, my insurance premiums every year, I pay once a year. I save 10% on my premiums every single year because I pay in full all at one time. I don't do monthly payments. So there's a lot of things. My son was in Taekwondo for 4 years. They had a pay in full option where they saved 10% if you paid in full for the entire year, as opposed to signing up and doing the monthly payments. So there's lots of great ways that you can save by having a budget and sitting down and saying, okay, based on these expenses that are coming up, And like you mentioned, you didn't have to buy those clothes this year, but you probably have an idea of what the kids are wearing. I mean, I know my partner's got 3 older girls. Lululemon was in the shopping cart last night, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." It is insane. I'm just like, "You gotta be." So anyways, but I get it. I was a teenager one time too, so but I think, it's preparing for that. And I think the best way, and is it gonna be 100% perfect? No, but at least you kinda get an idea of, okay, if this is some of the stuff that we know that they're gonna start liking, and we wanna be able to say yes to a few of those things, obviously there's limits and all that, then what do we need to start saving for on a monthly basis in order to get there? And so that's what we do in our house. And honestly, again, it's never perfect, but it takes so much stress and anxiety out of the plan. And then you can also get your kids involved too, which makes this really exciting too, is, especially at the start of summer. And you could say, hey, look, we've been saving up monthly to, pay for back to school expenses. But, as your kids get older, they can start also making money. My son is not at working age, but this year he was cutting grass for cash for people. And, he started putting his money aside. He started soccer. He just made his JV soccer team. He starts freshman year this year. And he wanted these $125 soccer cleats. And I'm like, dude, I just spent plenty of money on your regular school shoes. I ain't spending another $125 on soccer cleats. It's like, especially because the ones that you have on right now are working just fine. So I said, if you want them, you buy them. And that's what he's going to do. So I think, you can get your kids involved too with some of these and say, hey, this is going to be our budget. This is what we have planned for how much we're going to spend. But if you want to do more or you want to have more, then that's going to be on you to do that. And you need to find ways in order to start making money or helping around the house or figuring out ways that, you can work with your kids on how they can start earning, money to do things. And then they can start owning some of it too. And that teaches them how to start saving, how to start budgeting, how to start shopping. Because it's amazing how much money they don't want to spend when it's theirs. They love to spend your money, right?
Oh my gosh, I love that. What a great way to get them involved because you're then educating them and giving them the education that maybe we didn't get, growing up. I feel very lucky that my parents did. I had to do the same, right? I had to work and I had better makeup as a teenager than I do now as an adult, for sure. I mean, better with quotes, the more expensive stuff when I was a teenager. Who knows whether it's better or not? But yeah, absolutely. Once I have to spend my own money on different things, it does make a big difference. So yeah, so very good tips there. All right. I want to get into looking at automating things because we've talked a little bit about, setting up these sinking funds and, saving and things like that. I know there are lots of apps and, ways we can automate some of this. What's one of your favorite ones or favorite ways to do this to make things a little bit easier for us busy parents and folks?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for starters, I would take this slow for especially I think everyone's situation is different. If you're in a very tight paycheck to paycheck situation, sometimes automating is not necessarily always a good thing. And if you have a lot, like if you don't have enough savings to back up to depend on if something gets a little tight during a month. So I would say automation is good once you get your finances to a level where you're confident in your budget, you have enough cash flow. We didn't talk about, obviously the importance of building an emergency fund, but I think when it comes to automating, having some sort of a savings to back up or to depend on it, I think is so important. Like, just start with something small, like $1,000 to $3,000, something small. Get yourself a savings account. And that way, like if things do get tight during the month, an unexpected expense comes up or something happens in your budget that you didn't think was going to be there, or like maybe it's one of these expenses like we didn't plan for it, but we still got to pay for it. If you have things automated and all of a sudden you paid for it, now all those automations start coming through, like you're going to start racking up all these overdraft fees and things. So you just want to be careful with that. But once you're set up, like I am a huge automated, everything that I do is automated. All of my payments are automated. My savings is automated. My investing is automated. And the cool thing about today's technology and with a lot of the banks and the apps and a lot of these, I mean, all of it is right there at your fingertips in order to make your finances super easy and really a breeze to manage. It's just making sure that you've got that good plan set up like we talked about. The other thing I would like to say too, and kind of going back to looking at your expenses, is if you are living paycheck to paycheck and money is stressful, like look at your due dates that are coming out because it may look like you like put them on a calendar And you might find like in the first half of the month, most of your bills are coming out. And the second half of the month is pretty light, where you could just call your creditors or people you're, making payments to and asking them if you can move due dates around to ease some of the stress off of certain periods of the month. Because there are a lot of people that I work with that do experience that. And they're like, Brad, like the first 2 weeks of the month, like we cannot even hardly eat because all of our bills are coming out. But the last 2 weeks is like, that's when we start buying food again and all that. And I was like, well, why don't we just call and get things rearranged? So I think that all kind of comes with the automation too, is really making sure that throughout the calendar month, you're not creating these bottlenecks that are putting a lot of stress on your checking account and your finances.
Good points. Good points. Yeah, I love the idea of making sure you have the buffer. Doesn't have to be a lot, but if you had some unexpected, like you said, bill come through that you had to pay, yes, that's good point. Very good point, because we don't want those overdraft fees. That just makes everything harder and yeah, much more challenging. So, how do people stay motivated, right? Let's say, I mean, money is so stressful and sometimes we do want to reward ourselves. How do we stay motivated and committed, feeling like, okay, ugh, I don't want to have to eat ramen again this month. How do I make this better for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, putting rewards in your plan I think is a good thing. I think it's okay. I'm not a big fan of this scorched earth philosophy of getting out of debt. Like I've tried that method and all it led to was self-sabotage, right? So I think it depends again on your situation. In some situations, you have to go scorched earth based on where you are financially. You might have to do that for a little while, but just understand that's temporary. But if you don't have to do that, like, and you're someone who still enjoys going out for coffee once in a while, well, go do that. If you're someone who likes to go out to eat, go do that. If you're someone who likes to go out with your friends and have cocktails or whatever, well, no one's saying stop that stuff. Just don't let that stuff become a bigger priority than your own financial health. That's the thing that you really got to make sure that you're not doing. Because once it gets to that level, now we're talking about excessive spending and we're putting ourselves at risk because of these things that we're enjoying, right? So there needs to be somewhat of a balance. And then as far as like long-term motivation, I think one of the things that we really work with our members on, especially very early on when they join, is really developing like what we call is like why power, and creating a vision of what they want their life to look like. Because getting out of debt isn't easy. It is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of discipline. And there's going to be some things where you're going to have to sacrifice and say no to. And those things aren't going to be very fun. But at the same time, creating a vision, or even like if you want to do a vision board, those are pretty popular, right? But just really establishing what your why power is and focusing on that. Because what we tend to do is when we start a budget or we start a plan, we tend to focus on everything we have to give up instead of everything that we're actually going to be able to gain by doing the work that we need to do. So by putting it on paper, putting it on a vision board, put it on your refrigerator, put it on your bathroom mirror, wherever you need to see it, put it on your phone, any place that you need to see, like, hey, why am I doing this work? Why am I saying no to these things that feel a little painful right now? Because I want this big reward at the end. And I can tell you time and time again through my own life and from the people that I've helped all these years, there's not one of them that ever comes back and says, Brad, I regret that I went on this journey and I'm debt free now. Not one. They're actually the complete opposite. Well, they'll say, I wish I would have started this so much sooner in my life, knowing what I know now and knowing how much more at peace I am in my life. Because we tend to trick ourselves that like these things that we've been talking about here on this episode is, you know, they're going to be the things that are going to make us happy or fulfilled. But those feelings are very short lived until you're on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Where, when you finally have peace and less financial stress and you're really truly able to focus on the life that you really want to live, which for a lot of people I've helped, it doesn't come out to more stuff. It really is just, I like to be more present and be with my kids and not have to work as hard. And it's just nice to be able to sleep at night, not worry. So if you're looking for that motivation, that's what I would look for. And then look for external sources of motivation too. I mean, I think opening up your mind to new thoughts, new ideas, even some ideas that might challenge your common thinking when it comes to certain things, I think is okay. I think that helps you, round out your mindset of what you want, in your financial life. So, get around people who are having different conversations about money. Because again, if 7 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck, that sadly, and I hate to say this, most of the people in your family are likely struggling. Most of your friends are likely struggling. Most of your coworkers are likely struggling. Most of the people you probably hang out and see on social media are likely struggling. And when that's all you're hearing and when that's all you're around, that's the only thing that you're filtering through. And when you get yourself outside of these groups and people who are talking about investing or real estate investing or, wanting to get out of debt, it opens your mind to these different ideas that other people, other normal people are doing this. And there's no reason why you can't either. You just have to start doing what they're doing and you can start having that success too.
Yeah, I love it. You read it all right back to the stuff, which is really why I feel like there's so much overlap between, getting our finances in order and getting the stuff in our home in order. And so, yeah, absolutely. Get out there, branch out, listen to some other voices, understand that even just because you're seeing it on social media, like if you see somebody talking about like they have all this stuff and life is great or they're spending all this money, doesn't necessarily mean you got to see their, balance sheet at the end of the day, right? You don't necessarily get to see their bank statement at the end of the day or their credit cards or whatever. So, yeah, absolutely live into what feels authentic and true to you and you don't have to have it all. It's really shocking how, just like you said, it's the same thing. When people start to let go of their stuff, it does feel so much more peaceful. And when they get their finances in order, the peace that comes with that it's priceless. It really is priceless.
You can't even describe it. You can't. It's so hard. People say like, what does it feel like? And it's like, it's just, I, I still even have a hard time describing it today. It's amazing.
A breath of fresh air when you walk into an air conditioned space after it's hot and humid outside. Like, I mean, that kind of just like the feeling of relief. That's what it feels like. I think that's how I describe it. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, Brad, where can people find you? I know they're going to want to find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're looking for, hey, some light bulb moments in your life and you want to get some different information about personal finance, we have the Debt Free Dad podcast. We've been doing this now for nearly 5 years. We have over 270 episodes now. We release 2 new episodes every single week. So if you're looking for more motivation and just really education and really personal finance tips that are helping normal families, because that's what we all are on this show, this is a great place to start doing that. Obviously, you can also check us out on all social media channels or check us out on debtfreedad.com.
Sounds great. All right. And before I let you go, I always ask 3 rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what does clutter free mean to you?
Oh man, I think for me, it's more about having the right stuff because I don't have any issue with stuff. It's just having the right stuff that really kind of, I feel, supports the life that you want to live, but also in a way where it's organized and it doesn't stress you out. I think that's super important.
Very cool. Totally agree on that one. And what is making you happy right now or in this season of life?
Yeah, so for me, I just went through this huge major life event in my life. My previous spouse passed away, and over the last couple of years, me and my kids have had to basically rebuild our entire life. So right now, after you go through like an experience like that, like a life-altering experience like that, you have a new appreciation for life in general and just enjoying like more of the simple things, just being more present, just, when I'm hanging out with friends and family, because I'm a go-getter type of guy. When I built my business, like it was going. Sometimes you get so hyper focused on that, you tend to miss some of the simple things in life that really are like the free things. Like you should be paying attention more to those things. So I think for me, um, that's what's bringing me happiness right now, and that's really what's kind of brought me through and helped me rebuild and move forward.
Oh, well, yeah, that one touched me. I like that one. Sorry, you had to go through the hard stuff to get to, the good stuff, but that is kind of how life works, isn't it?
This sure is. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, man. All right. Well, number 3, what is a goal you have for yourself this year?
For me this year, I wanted to travel more. And I've been able to do that. I went on a cruise in December of the end of 2023. I went to Florida twice this year. I'm getting ready to go on another cruise in October, going to Mexico, hopefully around Christmas break time. So yeah, I just wanted to get out of my house, go see some stuff, let my kids experience some new things too. We had camped for so many years. Camping was such a big part of our lives. And it was just like after, again, going back through this experience, it was like, we need to do some new things, create some new memories, have some new experiences. And so this year was like all about travel for me.
Nice. I love that. All right. So more travel is the goal. I love it. All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was some awesome advice and information, and I know people are going to really resonate with it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great day. Okay, I love the intersection of money and stuff, and I really believe that there are so many overlaps aside from just using your money to buy the stuff that fills up your home or that old adage that all that stuff used to be money. Brad helped us break down the first step at looking at why we want to spend our money or buy the stuff in the first place. Now, it could be something as simple as being bored, which was his trigger, or it could be more complicated and be tied to FOMO and wanting all the stuff you see online. And in full disclosure, my spending trigger is getting too stressed out and wanting to make things easier. But I have learned that actually makes things harder because it just tacks on a layer of guilt and a layer of more stuff that I have to deal with at a later time. And so, with that, I will turn it to you. If you want to share your spending trigger, well, I'm here for it. But you can also just let me know what you thought of this episode. You can find me on the social channels. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free on all the networks. And you can join in the conversation on Facebook in the private community there. Just look for the Wannabe Minimalist Family Group and join on in. But thank you again to you for joining me on this conversation. And of course, a special thanks to Brad for sharing his take on budgets and decluttering our finances. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. I'm coming out with a few special bonus ones, and you aren't going to want to miss them, I promise. Until next time, take care, keep things simple, rip off that Band-Aid, and look at what you actually spent your money on over the last 6 months so that you can reclaim control. But most of all, please remember that I believe in you. I know you can do this. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.